thank you for coming, my friends. It's always kind of nerve-wracking to do things like this because you're not sure who would be interested in hearing the free flow of thoughts that you have on any given subject. But today we're going to talk about the process of the creative brief, which is going to, if you're going to be in the realm of video for business or any kind of creative output for business, the brief is your Bible. You don't do anything until you have that solidified in place. So backing up from there a little bit, most everything happening at this event is about film as a medium for, movies, short films, independent films, et cetera, et cetera. We at Global Fire, this is our team, a few of whom are in the room. Actually, Sam's wearing the same shirt that he was wearing in that, so he's easy to find. And so we are a small crew of 8 to 10 people, depending on who's in the office at any given time. And we make videos for business. We make corporate video. It is a real moneymaker. Surprisingly, I think amongst the film industry, maybe corporate video could be seen as some sort of inferior, ugly stepsister kind of thing. But corporate video is very lucrative. Video for business is very lucrative. So we're talking about businesses and brands who are looking for assets for Facebook, all manner of social media. I'm getting over a cold, so let's count how many times I cough. I wager there'll be like 120 of them, so we'll see. So brands, they have to find someone to make their videos. And so you might be surprised the number of big directors who will still go out and make a commercial. We have directors who make TV shows that you see on TV all the time. And they work with us making just internal corporate videos at times. So it's a very good industry. So today we're talking about video for business. And really, this subject will apply to any kind of creative output for business. So you have videos, but we're also talking about photography, et cetera, et cetera. I'm a producer. Amongst the many things I do, sometimes I'm a creative director on a given project. Most of the time, pretty much all the time, I'm the producer. I pitch, I set budgets, I negotiate with clients. I take things through from the first, we need a fill in the blank, we need a video, we need photography. I follow it through from there all the way through the ideation process, all the way through production and managing the teams and schedules and budgeting, all the way through final delivery. That is the luxury of being in a tiny agency where you have the opportunity to have that vast range of experience in the creative industries. You might find if you go into a big ad agency, your role is very micro, you are, there's a big flow of quite a lot of different creatives. I get to do it all, which is super luxurious. So let's go back quickly because I'm actually already ignoring my notes. I'm a waffler, so I'm trying to mitigate against that. However, now I have an hour, and I thought I only had 30 minutes, so that's pretty cool. So I want to take a poll of the room and kind of get a feel for what we have going on. I know we have some students, film students. I know we have a producer, Hannah. Woo. Sam is my production manager and office manager and just does all sorts of stuff. Health and safety, those kinds of things are really, really important. One of the first talks I went to today was about kind of the nitty-gritty roles, the important things that keep everybody safe and keep your money safe against being sued and injuring people and things. So Sam is our guy who might say, hey, why isn't there safety tape around this tripod? Blah, blah, blah. So can't do without him. This is Mark. He's a director, editor, animator, creative director, amazing badass. We've got Sasha, one of our shooter editors back there. So we have professionals. We have students. What do you do?
I'm an independent filmmaker doing mostly documentaries.
Cool.
I've done corporate videos.
Super.
So I shoot. I have a camera background. I'm a member of the International Cinematographers Guild.
Amazing. Let's talk.
And
Let's talk. Let's talk later.
Yeah,
That sounds interesting.
But this is interesting because when you work as one person, sometimes you can't understand how other people and processes work. So it's always nice to see. And when you work on your own, you don't usually get that crosstalk. And so it's nice to be at a situation like this.
Yeah, I agree. Going to networking events and things like that's helpful too, because when you're out there and you're like freelancing, it's a lonely road.
And you never know if you're doing it right. So it's always good to see how someone else approaches
Yes.
the situation.
However, that reminds me, I must give you a disclaimer here. I learned all this stuff I don't know what's the right way to do anything that I've ever done. I've actually always eschewed or kind of like said no to anything that would want to try and teach me the right way to do things because those are boxes and doesn't fit my mindset. So yeah, this all comes with a disclaimer. This is the Elizabeth way. Who knows if this is the right way? I think it's right. Seems to work. But, everybody else? What's everybody doing? Do you make corporate videos? Creative stuff for businesses? Yes? Okay, cool. Take notes of questions on any aspect of production. We have time. So anything you want to ask. And we also have, all my technical crew here and people who can answer any manner of anything. If you want to talk about how to deal with clients, if you want to say, I have this situation, what should I do? Whatever. And throw questions out all throughout these shenanigans. Okay, what's a creative brief? So there's like a technical definition. It's a document that gives you details of what should be considered when something's being designed. A good creative brief will focus your efforts and sharpen your message. So it is a document. Doesn't have to be flashy, but it has important things in it, which we will discuss exactly what those things are. So why do we have creative briefs? There's 3 reasons. Clarity. It establishes with you and your client it is not a contract, but it is the beginning of one, and it is a social contract. It's probably not something you could take to a lawyer and say, we had a brief. It's not usually signed or anything, but it is a form of social contract. Everybody's on the same page. Your client comes to you and says, I need a video, and so all of this stuff is in the brief. It makes things nice and clear. It's in writing. It's formal, which is a great way to start. Communication. It is astounding the level at which we can assume or presume all sorts of things. And so it's really important for everything, every tiny nitty-gritty, every deadline, every, output, what they're expecting, how long you're agreeing that it's going to be. All of those things should be communicated. And it's great to have those things in writing, because when you have many clients and they write to you like you're supposed to just remember exactly what's going on, and you've got you're managing 10 projects at a time or whatever, you need to be able to go back and look at this document and just get yourself on the same page and make sure that things are being communicated. Things being in writing are important, especially when things go wrong. Consensus, it's just, we agree this is the way forward. You build the brief with your client, and we'll talk about the process of building the brief so that you're on the same page. These are all, 3 of these things are different ways of saying it gets you on the same page. So, assumption. Presumption is dangerous. This is a really ridiculous example of what could go wrong. And if you ever go to maybe the Twitter, the Clients from Hell Twitter, or the website Clients from Hell, there's so many stories. And I think that was just very poorly managed expectations. It's important to manage the most simple of expectations before you go on this journey of creative discovery, of making something. You need to define everything. Don't assume or presume anything. So who writes the brief? sometimes, and usually from more, I'd like to say bigger companies, but it's actually kind of the more startup companies that are trying really hard to make sure they're doing everything right will send really beautiful briefs with everything you need to know, and there's no stone left unturned. There's nothing left to wonder about what it is that we're making, who are we talking to, who is their audience, what do they want them to do after they see this piece of content, where is it going to be going, is it Facebook, do the people that we're talking to know the product exists or the service? If so, what do they think about it? A really beautifully written brief, which is like, it's like Christmas in my inbox when I get one. I'm like, oh, this is so great, because that's exactly what I'm looking for. If you don't have that, then you have to take your clients through the process of building one, and that's not generally billable hours. It's not generally something you can charge for. It's just something that you have to do to make sure that you do a job well. So you will often get something we term an RFP, which is a request for proposal. A request for proposal is something that sometimes goes out to multiple different agencies or freelancers, and it's inviting everybody who receives it the opportunity to read everything there and respond with a proposal for how to fulfill that need. This is also sometimes called pitching on spec, or quoting, or working on spec. This is speculative process where the client, say, Ford, Coca-Cola, whoever, has a certain number of agencies in their supply chain who are on the list to be invited to pitch for things. And the first step is you have to get on these lists. And these are really huge companies I'm talking about. So it's easier to get into smaller ones. And I can tell you some of the ways that I've done that. And so you get something that resembles a brief, but it's an RFP. It's a request for proposal. It is different from a brief. Pretty much everything, a lot of the same information is on there. But the brief, sometimes you will write it, and sometimes your client will, is basically what I'm saying. Ideally, the client will write it, but we don't always have that luxury. So on the little teaser in the lovely brochure for this event, it says, your client comes to you and says, we want a video. And what do you do? So that is the crux of this, is people will come to you and say, we need this. Sometimes that's not even what they need. It's a process of kind of tearing away the layers and going, why do you think you need that? And let's move back and see what we can do about finding, what you really need. But quite often, potential clients will come to you and they won't exactly know what they're looking for. They'll just know that they need to make something. If it's a really big company like the ones that we work with, and there's lots of different layers, sometimes somebody in internal comms or a marketing team will have been tasked with making a video. So their people up the chain will have said to them, you need to produce a video campaign. So it's our job to help them figure out what's the right thing. And this means not just having a head for creativity and for video, but having a head for business and being able to say, how do we produce the results that you're after? Thinking like an advertiser, even if it's just an internal video, you're pretty much always advertising and trying to influence people's thinking no matter what you're making. So studying advertising really helps in that process. The party who benefits the most from the brief is the creative team. Because there are times where the client will bounce around, and sometimes the goalposts will change, which we can talk about. And when the goalposts change, the brief is a beautiful, beautiful document you can go back to and go, okay, let's go back and remind ourselves what we're doing here. If all of a sudden you're talking to men who are 18 to 25, and originally this was for women, you can say, well, it looks like the audience has changed. And that actually gives you a bit of leverage when you need to go back and actually review what you're charging them if they mess you around. Sometimes, oh, well, we covered RFPs, requests for proposal. Sometimes it's called an what's another name for it? Does anybody know? Or it's an RFP and it's called like a request for pitch or whatever. So sometimes it's just a phone call. Sometimes it's just your client going, hey, we need to make something. Sometimes it's super official and there's like a deadline for getting your proposal to them, and then, you know, like interviews will happen with all the pitching agencies in this time period, and you have to be ready to take a phone call and answer for every single one of the numbers on your proposal and have exact reasons for why everything is on there, all that stuff. It can be stressful and super fun. So these are the 3 stages of creating your brief and then being able to create something amazing for them. So the first stage is the RFP. They will request for you to propose what you should do. Sometimes it's just a proposal. I propose we make 3 videos, or you are actually being interviewed to go pitch. And then the second stage is the client questionnaire. You need to interrogate your clients as to what it is that they need, and sometimes you're helping them figure it out as they go. If the RFP isn't one of these gorgeous documents that has literally everything that you ever needed to know about who you're communicating with, what you're making and why, all the deadlines, all that stuff, style that they want, you know, insights into their brand, all that stuff. If that stuff is not in the RFP, then you need to take them through the process of a client questionnaire. You can find a lot of online templates for client questionnaires. And I ask them things like, you know, basics about the business. Is it a family business? Do you have any claims to being environmentally friendly or green? You know, are you in a regulated industry? I ask them so many questions that might not seem relevant to what we're doing now, but they can pique ideas. For instance, if they have, you know, a green element, but they haven't thought about capitalizing on that, you can suggest that later on. So you ask them, you completely interrogate them about their business. And then, you know, I ask them things about this particular project that they're proposing. Who are we talking to? What do they believe? Do they know the product exists? If so, what do they think of it? If not, why don't they know the product exists? Where is this going to be placed? You know, who's going to be, who, if it's sometimes a video is being created for a conference or for an expo. So if like somebody upstairs today was showing video, it'd be important for you to consider whether or not the viewers can hear the audio. If not, you need to be telling a story that is easy to read and decode and understand without the use of sound or sometimes even music. So all of these things are super, super important. And then once you interrogate them and get all of these questions out, and it will instill them with confidence, it will make them feel that you are uber smart to have been asking them all these things they haven't thought of. And also, they are investing some time, which you can never get back. Money is money. Time you can never get back. So once you have engaged the client or the potential client in this process, you are inviting them to invest in the relationship. And so people will rarely invest time without getting something out of it. They have sunk a cost into talking to you. And because of the sunk cost model of thinking, we want to get something out of that. So you're more likely to actually engage them as a client if you've spent some time understanding and inviting them to share with you their vision for their business. And then now you can write the brief. And then you can make it. So this little thing is to remind me, I'm like looking at my notes, what is this about? Examples of when a client might move goalposts. So sometimes you will find in the process of creating, the client will get excited. It's not malicious or it's like through any fault of your own or their own. Sometimes we'll be like, oh, and we can make this and we can make that, or we could pack this much information into what we're doing. And if all of a sudden this project is becoming a huge documentary film, and you're going, well, let's go back to the brief. Let's remind ourselves that the goal here was to inform people who didn't know that your brand of bottled water existed. And so we simply need to entertain them and just help them, know that you exist. That's it. It's not about like putting all of the details about your brand in the video. So let's just remember that that's all we're trying to do here. Sure, let's make more videos. If we want to flesh all those things out, let's start, another process to make more. I have ideas in my head already, whatever it is you need to do, say. So those are moving goalposts. If those changes in goalposts are warranted because you've discovered something new in the process of working through this, creating this thing, if it's warranted and you think it's, good, but still it's kind of, you're going back in time now and redoing a part of the process that will have a knock-on effect on whatever you've made. We have made entire campaigns that have been trashed. We have made really cool stuff that will never see the light of day because initiatives in the company have changed or the idea had to completely go back to scratch. And that's fine. It's just that there's a cost attached to that. And if you have everything, if you've got that clarity, if you've got that communication, if you've got all of the things needed to be able to justify why you have to charge to redo that process, then there should be no problem doing that because you have invested so much time and energy into the brief. So this is where I was meant to end. And look, I did 26 minutes, which is great when I thought this talk was only half an hour long. So I would love to talk to you guys. I get emails every single day from students, from people who want to intern, wanting access to information that I have in my head, apparently. So this is a great opportunity to ask somebody your burning questions. I know you have 100, so please don't hold back. I've been talking to some of you before this. So let's talk about this or about anything about production or dealing with clients or communication, managing expectations. I have a background in advertising and marketing, and I would love to spill my brain if anybody wants. So.
That's not entirely related, but how do you as a company go about looking for clients, or do they tend to come to you?
Yeah, that's the golden question. How do we get these clients? Some of them were totally gorgeous coincidences. The birth of our company was a beautiful clashing together of right place at the right time. But that's not realistic. That's not helpful for anybody asking me this question. So what I do is a variety of different things. I really believe in diversification. I think it's important to have your finger in lots of different pies. So if this one goes bad, it's cool. You've got everything. You've got all burners going, all sorts of different things going on. So sometimes we come up with ideas for brands or types of products, and they don't even know that we exist. Every once in a while, I will stalk a marketing director or a brand director on Instagram, and I'll say to them, we have some ideas for you. I know you don't know who we are. I don't know if you're shopping, but we have some ideas. And can I talk to you? Can I come talk to you? I am in town. I'm in the area or whatever. I will take a train to any borough in London. I will go anywhere to get FaceTime with a brand director and just introduce ourselves and go, here's some ideas. It might have nothing to do with your current marketing plans or whatever. And some of those interactions have been really fruitful because, it's not cold calling necessarily. It's kind of going, I've had my eye on you guys. I really love what you're doing. I feel that our brand really aligns with yours. Can I come talk to you? And, most people won't say no to that, especially if you say, I have ideas for you. That's just free. That's a gift. So that can be one way. Another way is you can get on all sorts of portals where there are briefs out to tender, and people can respond to the briefs. You can take part in competitions for brands who have, advertising competitions on the go. And if you win, then, you've got a client. If you don't, you've got some piece of content that you've been driven to make by this, and then that can go in your portfolio. You can use that to sell. So getting out there and hustling is really important. And then when you do a really great job, hopefully they will tell other people, this is who we use for video. This is my documentary filmmaker. This is, the producer who got it done. And so that's the ideal situation, is word of mouth, and it's gorgeous when that happens, and it makes me happy, and I feel like we have friends all over the place. So there's that. And then there is, sometimes people will leave the companies that we work for, and they will go somewhere else to another big company, and they'll take us with them. So there's like this kind of exponential growth. Every once in a while, someone will just find our website. Those tend to be some of the most interesting jobs, because there's no relationship. There's no like, oh, I know someone you know, and there's no rapport. It's kind of just, it's strange. I don't know what I think of that. So I really value relationship-based business, even if it's just going out and making the relationships. And then you have networking events, which are sometimes, excuse me, sometimes so hard at first, because you walk into this room of people, they're usually suited and booted, and I'm the only person there with tattoos, and I'm really out of place. And you have to kind of just make conversation out of thin air. But some of these networking events can be really profitable. If you're in a really niche market, the guy sitting next to me sells insurance, this guy over here is CRM management, whatever, they're probably gonna find it harder. But we, as creatives, do you know that as creatives, we're we have this deity status, because people don't know how it happens, and they're like, ooh, it's all the creatives. And we're really lucky, because we can talk mumbo jumbo and people just go, I think you must be right. And you can help businesses with video. And everybody's looking for video, because everybody's being told you need video. You need video for Facebook. You won't survive on LinkedIn without Actually, I went to one of the talks about crowdfunding and different methods for crowdfunding for your project. And they said, if your thing doesn't have a video, then you're dead in the water. Of course, if you're crowdfunding for a film, you should be able to make your own promotional video. That should be a no-brainer. But there are businesses out there who are trying to crowdfund, sales, video for sales, pitches, taking PowerPoint presentations and turning them into videos to make, presentations more dynamic. There's so much scope for us. You just have to get out and hustle. You have to work on your elevator pitch, and, just get up in people's faces and go, this is who I am. But you also need to know who you are. And this is who I am, and this is what I do, and this is what I can offer you. And yes, I can do loads of things, but a confused mind says no. So if we're confusing people with, I do this, and I do this, and they're just gonna go, I don't know what I need from you. But I go, oh, I see you're in banking. Have you ever thought of, having a YouTube channel with, who's your audience? Who's your ideal client? What do they want to know? How can you help them? Let's make some videos about that. So that's one way of getting new business. Lots of ways of getting new business.
With the networking events, what do you find out about the networking events? Obviously, I'm a little student, so I don't actually know.
Yep, okay. So you go to, just go online, go to Eventbrite, and find local business networks in your area. There are things like business breakfasts, which are 6:30 to or 7 to 9 o'clock in the morning. So it's set up for business people. We go to a conference room, a hotel, have a catered breakfast. You sit around tables and you get the opportunity to go around the table and say, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is what I can offer, and you make relationships. And some really cool stuff can come out of those things. There's a women's, WIBN, Women in Business Network, and they are all over the world, I think. And there are lots of them in this area. And, you know, they meet once a month, and, you know, that's how you find them. Just Google. Just get on the Google box.
I just wonder how you find what you might have is the creative tension between, I mean, how do you come up with your creative ideas, and then you've got to try and bring people along who are perhaps more conservative about image and approach, and how you deal with that tension. This will be a great video for you. Oh, I don't like it, it's a bit off the wall.
Yep. So, do you mean the conservative person might be the client?
Yeah. Conservative small c, that's a bit radical for what we,
yeah.
And you think it will really push your brand or whatever, but they don't see it.
Well, I think the first thing is we know our clients very well. The companies that we work for all the time. And so quite often we can tell them, actually, we did this for you before, a different department in your company or a different branch of your company, and it worked really well. It was the most viral video ever on your intranet. And it was award-winning, and they're like, oh. So, sometimes they take that tack. Sometimes, so I personally, big surprise, I have no problem challenging a client. I'm a challenger. I tend to come with statistics. I like to come with very good reasoning. This is the reason why, and I think one of the things that sets you up really well for that interaction is we don't pitch ideas. We come and we give our recommendation. And I only give one recommendation. I'm not pitching ideas, I'm selling a recommendation. So all things considered, we have looked at your problem, we have looked at we've looked at what you're trying to achieve, we've looked at what you've done before, we've looked at your industry, a cross-section of what works, what doesn't, blah, 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 blah. This is our recommendation. And I think we don't very often come across that's too zany. We wouldn't come up with an idea that didn't work. That said, in a few days, I'm doing a pitch to a company, and I don't know what they're gonna say, because the idea is a little bit outside of what I think they're looking for. But I hope that we're gonna invite them to dream bigger and to think bigger. If not, I've worked into the pitch an element of, and also we plan to give you a more conservative, what you're looking for. So this will definitely work. This stuff might go down a treat. You might actually get on Ad Week. You might get some visibility outside of the realm that you were dreaming of. So I think if you go in confidently as an expert, and you're giving a recommendation rather than trying to share ideas, I think it's how you position yourself. You can mitigate against getting that reaction in the first place. But when you do, I mean, they are the client. Every once in a while, we have to make things that I don't think are the right thing. But we find our way, and we find some common ground. And I also tend to say no. I also tend to say, I really wouldn't recommend doing that, Sometimes an ad that we suggest or dream up is, they want to take the punchline and further explain it. And I go, do you think perhaps it won't look so confident if you try and double up the punchline? Because it's almost like maybe the audience isn't smart enough to have got your punchline the first time. And they're like, oh yeah, and I'm like, we don't want to treat your audience like they're dumb. So there's ways of talking your way out of that stuff. It's the gift of the gab. Yeah.
And at what point in this process do you start talking numbers with your clients? Is it always right from the get-go, or is it more organic than that?
Oh, I can't believe I forgot about numbers. Yeah, the numbers. Sometimes an RFP will have numbers on it, and they'll say, this is our budget. Often it doesn't. And when I'm talking to, I'll get an RFP, and quite often it feels like it was a template that somebody plugged a bunch of stuff into. So I'll find out usually an RFP will have a contact for this contract is so-and-so. And I'll say, hey, can we just have a call so I can clear up a few things? I noticed there isn't a budget on this RFP. Where do you stand on that? And people, people get sketchy about numbers. And I say, listen, the agency that you hire, you should trust, not to just go, what a coincidence, that's what we were going to charge. So, feel free to tell me your numbers if you want. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they go, well, we just want to see where and what are you going to do? You just have to come up with the quote. This is what we think it will take to make this. So I talk about numbers, as soon as possible, so that we make sure that we're not coming up with ideas that don't fit that. It would be terrible to come up with a thing and we're going to bring in Michael McIntyre and he's going to do his little shtick, and it would be ridiculous to come up with an idea like that if they have a tiny budget. So you want to make sure to talk about that as early as possible. And when it comes to numbers, I find we in this sector, the numbers can be very big. And by big, I mean like the value of my whole house, So don't think about these numbers in terms of your reality. Don't think about these numbers like what you could afford if you were making a video. Forget about all that. These are like billion-pound companies. Spending 80 grand on a video is nothing. So just be confident and go in there with this is what it will take to make the best possible thing. And then if they share a budget with you that's different than that, go, well, this is what we can do for that. And this is how the output, this is how what this will look like will be affected by that budget. We won't get as high caliber actors. We'll have to pull in some favors. We won't have someone who's doing X, Y, Z. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
So I've only been running a tiny little production company for like 6 months now,
Okay.
and my learning from that 6 months has been a ton of my time is spent on like pitching and spec work and negotiating, whereas what I'm good at is making stuff. So how much of your time is spent on that sort of process, and does it kind of get in the way?
I think we're in a luxurious position of being established for quite a long time. I wasn't there at the conception of Global Fire, so I can't say how much time was spent doing that. We were actually born out of like I said, a right place at the right time kind of thing with a big blue chip company, and they kind of said, we need this. Someone who was working at that company in-house went, I'll make that. And they said, okay, cool. You need to get established. You need to get a VAT registered. You need to set up a company. And they did it. And then all of a sudden, our first client was a big blue chip. So that's not realistically how it always happens. Yes, 90% of what you do is hustle, is getting yourself out on this, on the beat, just like selling, trying to get your voice heard, trying to get in front of people, and then 10 or 20% is making beautiful things. It's just the nature of the beast. You could have a business partner who's a real business-minded person who is bringing in all that business, and then you're getting to make the stuff. So I would say if it's not your passion, if you don't feel like you're good at it, find a way to find somebody else to do that, and it will pay for itself if they're good at what they do.
What do you do when stuff goes wrong? For example, you've managed clients' expectations, but it turns out they need something totally different, and then you need to increase the budget, and they say, oh, we can't do that budget. Or if you do have a problem client, how do you deal with it? Obviously you don't want to burn bridges, but sometimes something's just not feasible. How would you manage that?
Yep. Well, I think if the expectations are managed really well, I would like to think things like that won't happen. However, I still get that once in a while, and I just realize they just don't understand the process because they are in the building industry or they are in healthcare or, they're not in this creative industry. That's why they need us. So sometimes there's only so much you can do. Going back to the brief is the best possible thing you can do. Going back to your contract and saying, if the budget can't expand, then we either need to stick with what it was you originally briefed, what we were making, or you might find that you're not able to make this piece of content because it costs money. So, sometimes, no, you don't want to burn bridges, but you don't need to walk across every bridge that's presented to you. So I think having the guts to just go, I've had clients who have said, oh, we can't afford that. And I go, well, then you can't have it. Because our services are like, it's like for a lot of people they're imaginary, but what they don't realize, and sometimes you might find it helpful on your quote to itemize everything. This is like what it costs to hire all of this kit. This is the producer, this is the pre-production, this is the storyboarding, this is the music, because then they get a picture of like, wow, it takes so much more than I thought to make these things. And then they start to get an appreciation for why it is it costs, what it does. So, those are things you can do. I found that when you itemize everything, sometimes clients will feel like they can pick and choose and go, let's do without a producer. Do we really need a producer? Like, well, unless you want to run the whole show, I guess, you could save a couple grand. So there's two ways that can go. It depends on what kind of personality you have in facing those things. I don't know if that answers your question. I think you just have to be confident and get the guts to and you can anytime you need to challenge a way of thinking, it's completely possible to do that with kindness. I don't think we have to be like jerks about it, but it's like walking. Sometimes I go, okay, so you sell shoes, right? What if I came to you and said I couldn't afford your shoes? Come on, John, what would you say? And they're like, well, I'd say you can't. Exactly. Like, we want to help you, but, it just costs money because, like, I have to pay my mortgage and my kids need to eat. So if you relate it to their business and what would you do in this situation, sometimes they go, oh, I realize this is ridiculous. And you can help them out. Cool. Yes?
Have you got any tips for managing multiple projects at a time? How many projects do you have in your at any single time?
Get one of these guys. It'll be fun.
Yeah. So Sam is my production manager. It takes well, you know what? I didn't always have a team. I just used to be insane. I was just like losing it and doing everything: casting, locations, health and safety. Why isn't there safety tape? And where's the catering? And I did everything. So it is possible to do everything on a job in the same way as possible to do multiple jobs. You have to keep a really tight diary. I find things like Basecamp are really helpful. Basecamp is, an online thing for teams to collaborate, but you can collaborate with yourself as well because you have a project, you have the quote in there, you have the contract, you have all the, all the documents you can upload to one place, so you have like a project management area for each one of the projects that you're running. It's your project manager. A producer, people go, what do you do? And I say, I'm a producer. And they think, wow, that's sexy. It's not. I'm a project manager. It's like herding sheep, herding cattle. And, I find a lot of the skills in life lend themselves to what would you do if you got invited to like 3 parties in a week or 2 parties in one night? How would you manage that? Every job is a party. Can you do go to 2 parties on one night? If not, you probably can't do 2 jobs in one day. But that doesn't mean you can't find someone to pay to do those jobs and make some, money outsourcing that. You can be the solution to that problem. You don't have to be the person who actually makes it.
But saying we have actually done different jobs on different days, but it's properly planned. We say, oh, let's use the same location or somewhere nearby or something like that. And if you do it,
True.
planning, basically is key, I think, to multiple projects.
Yeah, keeping all the balls in the air at the same time.
Don't do it all in email because you'll just get lost. If you have everything in email, like you say, Basecamp or...
Yeah, things like Basecamp are
Do you
great.
have to pay for Basecamp, or is it a free thing?
Basecamp is not free. What is, like, maybe they have a student, are you a student?
Yeah.
They might have a student rate, kind of like Photoshop does and stuff.
System. Even something like Google Drive can help.
Google Drive, yeah. Just make folders in your computer or whatever. It's the same thing where you drop everything, where you keep your notes. I use Evernote, you know, things like that. Lists, we use Wunderlist at work to keep lists in, you know, we just, it's just nature of the job, but do you have any specific examples or does that help at all?
That does help. That's useful. Yeah.
Good. Super. Cool. Anything else? 8 minutes.
I actually have some questions.
Good. Oh, you're out of questions. I thought you said you had another one. I was like, wow, she's on a roll.
Traditionally, when you finish, like at what point after you've given the brief do you follow up with a contract and then like a start invoice or something?
Well, quite often they want something like yesterday. So if they want, you know, something filmed in March, I go, okay, so, you know, how does this sound to you? Does this resonate with you? Are all of these things the things that we've discussed? Do you feel like, you know, there's anything that needs to be changed? You know, I get feedback on presentation if possible. Present in person, or you do it over the phone, or you do a Skype or whatever. And you know, you can get it. You can get the brief physically signed if you want, or you can just, you know, send an email and say, you know, is this signed off? If so, then we can go to the next stage of the process, which will be blah 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 blah. And if you call them stages, then they'll understand that once that's signed off, you can't go back. We're just moving forward. We're moving forward towards delivery. And so you just have to make sure to use the right words. Call them stages, and is this signed off? And are we done with this part? You know, so that they know it's not like a living, breathing thing that you can keep editing along the way.
Be clear about your deliverables as well.
Yes, that's always something on the brief. Good? Thanks, guys.